I am Natalie. I see you. Jezan. I am Joji. I see you. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are live. Please invite your friends and family, only the ones you like that might benefit from today's session. Before we get started, send the link, share the link with them. Please thumbs up, like as much as you can so that the algorithm does its thing and we can get enough cool people like yourselves on this session for the next 59 minutes. It's 8:01 p.m. Asha, Marcus, I see you guys on TikTok. We're also live on YouTube and Facebook, LinkedIn, no Twitter, SpaceX, Bado. Yeah, thank you so much for making time. My name is Solomon Wangwe. I am the founder and managing director of Goshen Acquisitions Limited, as well as its wholly owned subsidiary, Grand Acres, the most transparent land sellers in Kenya. Been doing this for 12 and a half years, going on 13 in January, which is just a few months away. So we've learned a thing or two about how to do this in Kenya. It's our specialty. Georgie is laughing. Did I say SpaceX? I meant X, Twitter. Hey, why not? Who knows? We might be beaming from space soon. But we're excited to have today's session. It's been, I think we canceled the last one because I think I was tied up with some function or I was traveling the next day, something. At any rate, we're grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation today, question and answer session. So, as always, if you have questions, pressing questions, curious things, random musings, comments, commentaries, opinions to share around real estate investing in Kenya, please send those in. We're going to spend the next 58 minutes answering as many of those as we can. And hopefully we all learn something new and edifying today. So I'm all yours. Send in your questions. Let's get started. As I said before, please share the invite link to others like you who you think would benefit from whatever we're going to talk about today, especially if they are into land investment, property investment, or thinking about it, looking to do it, have gotten burnt before. Only qualification is that you like them, okay? Because we only want good vibes, as always. So, twende kazi, which is Swahili for let's get to work. For those of you who might not be Swahili speakers, that's what I just said in Swahili. Okay, we have our first question from Ranger5462 on Instagram. It's a comment, I guess. It's a question. How are you? I am very well. Ranger, thank you for asking. Been following you for a while. Thank you for following us, Ranger. We appreciate your followership. Ranger says, I have done a diploma in land surveying, currently a degree in the same. I'm in a fix. Is drone technology the new era in today's world? First of all, congratulations on your diploma. All success to you with your degree. Answer for me is yes. Drone technology is not only the future, it's already the present in many respects. So I'm not sure what courses they're offering out there as far as drone technology is concerned, particularly as relates to land surveying. But if they are available, 100% be the best expert you can be on that, because it's only going to become more integral to the normal way of doing things, at least as far as land surveying, as well as other applications, the military. We've all seen what's happening in the news in Israel, um, the different theaters of warfare or conflict where drones are being used to minimize the loss of human lives, at least in as far as um operators of these equipments are concerned. So yes, 100% full throttle. I strongly recommend that you pay attention to that. Abdul Fattah, what's up, Abdul Fattah? It's good to see your name out there. It's been a while. Abdul Fattah says, "Good evening, Grand Acres." Yes, it's been a while. Good to see you. Safari underscore KE on Instagram says, "Can I get big piece of land in high end area in Kenya? Example, Karen or Runda." I don't see why not. Safari underscore Kenya. Um, I don't think Runda has any spaces that qualify as being big pieces. Runda is very developed. It's a densely developed high-end part of our capital city. I think the largest I've ever heard of, at least in the last probably 5 6 years, was 10 acre block. I'm not sure if that qualifies as being big for you, Safari underscore KE, but certainly in Karen, you will find even bigger pieces. The answer is yes. We don't sell those currently anyway. Those do not meet our investment criteria as, um, I guess I would call a mass market seller of parcels of land, because we have to buy big. We go through the rigor of fragmenting that piece of land, keeping compliance with the laws, county policies, and so on, and selling to as many people as possible the smallest allowable piece legally and ethically. Karen and Runda do not qualify for that. First of all, the space is an issue. Second, the cost is an issue. Even if we were to find a 50-acre block of land in Karen, at the current prices, we'd need to be tying up tens of millions of dollars. That's a very different market from the one we typically serve. And so it's unlikely that we would have our typical product available for you to consider in those two particular locations. But I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you should be able to find those pieces. Safari underscore Kenya, thank you for asking your question. Abdul Fattah says, when are we seeing grand acres in the coast? I wish I had a precise answer for you, Abdul Fattah. The truth is, we don't know yet. We are actively scouting several opportunities at any given time. As soon as we do find something that's clean and transactionable as per our standards, you will hear about it, I promise you. So keep watching this space. Ranger 5462 on Instagram says, which are the best real estate companies in Kenya? Currently, I have no big exposure in land survey or real estate. Where can I get help? Well, Ranger, best real estate companies, I'd start with Grand Acres. Um, yes, I am biased, but it's also a statement of fact. You can check that out for yourself. I can't speak about the others. I would need very detailed and specific knowledge of how other companies operate before I start rating them, at least as relates to land surveying in the context of your first question, right? Unless you want to clarify that further, Ranger 5462. Um, if you don't have much exposure, I strongly recommend that you read up. If you're not here, that is. If you're in Kenya, there's no reason why you would not be exposed. You could walk into any number of real estate companies that you admire and follow. That would be a great place to start. Okay. Read up, do your due diligence, check as many companies out online, if not physically. I think that's a fairly easy problem to solve. And I wish you well with that, Ranger 5462. Thank you for asking. Charlie's Charlie Zoa. Charlie Zoa 6 on TikTok says, if the property is small but in an area rapidly growing, do you still invest? Well, Charlie, I'm not sure if you're asking me if we would still invest or whether you should still invest in that context. Please clarify so that I can answer the appropriate question. But thank you for sending that in. Jared Wall. Hey, Jared, good to see you. Jared Wall says, does the pending development of residential property apartments at Safari Center in Naivasha represent potential difficulties for similar development of Olkekun? That's a great question, Jared. My immediate answer would be no. I think there is no direct relation between Safari Center and our project Olkekun, other than the fact that we are directly opposite one another from the highway. Safari Center is a differently structured development. I have no idea why they are experiencing difficulties. If they are, I have no details about what's keeping them from implementing or executing on their strategies that they've marketed so well. Our project at Olkekun has its own challenges, and these mostly have to do with quantum of capital to roll out the development in a manner that is cost effective and compliant. There are certain things we have to put in place, permits we need to get sorted out before we actually start moving earth. So, I wouldn't say that there's any direct correlation. Maybe on a macro level, if you're looking at the macroeconomic factors to consider, the state of the economy, availability of capital, particularly for our industry, which is seen as long-term and therefore high risk for certain classes of investments or investors. Maybe I haven't gone that far as the analysis, but that would be the best direct answer I can give at this point, Jared. Thank you for asking. John Anjichi Nathan says, good evening, Solomon. From where you sit as a stakeholder in land matters, how is the progress of the digitization of title deeds from the Ministry of Lands? From where I sit, I think it's going painfully slow. But this was to be expected. It's an arduous task that the government has undertaken. Long overdue, should have been done decades ago. But here we are. At least they've started, which is something to be grateful for. So we have no choice but to be patient and be ready to be responsive when they do gazette our specific title deeds, which they are doing by zones. So check your dailies on a regular basis. Check out Ardhi Sasa, or the Ministry of Lands website for regular updates as relates to your specific property and where that process is. But those are my 2 cents, John, and thank you for asking. User 56500 on TikTok says, my name is Lemayan, a land surveyor. I have been thinking if Grand Acres can invest in Kimana. Well, I don't see why Grand Acres would not invest in Kimana if we did find the right opportunity from a point or perspective of location. It has to be where we feel it needs to be. Secondly, pricing and the size. Those two are related, obviously. The bigger you buy, the more money you're spending, even if the price is lower per acre, relatively speaking. Yes, Grand Acres can invest in Kimana if we find the right opportunity that meets our goals. Do you have something to sell, Lemayan? Let us know. Reach out to DM us. Let's have a convo, and let's see if there's something to do there. Charlie Zoa 6, a follow-up question. Would you still invest? There's a bit of a typo there.
Would you still invest?
Oh, it's a Kenyan English. Oh, it's Swanglish. Okay. Would you still invest? Man. Sorry, Charlie Zoa 6. Some of us went to groups of schools, so our English is a bit different. Okay, would you still invest if it has high appreciation or potential for appreciation? Okay, so please remind me what the first question was that this is a follow-up to.
If the property is small, but in an area
small. Okay, yes, if the property was small, but has absolutely. I mean, why not? What's the point? I always go back to what we put together with a Grand Acres checklist, the 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya. Step number 1 is define your goal. So, what is the purpose of buying the small parcel of land? Is it for capital gains? Is it as an investment, long-term saving strategy? Do you intend to build on it? Do you intend to live in it or on it? Do you intend to build and rent it out? What sort of building are you permitted to do on that piece of land in its current location? All these answers are necessary for you to have a clearly defined goal, I would say. So if the point is to invest for capital gains at some undefined point in the future, if it's a highly appreciating area or has potential for high appreciation, 100%. If you can afford it, buy it now. Today is the cheapest that land will be, at least historically speaking. So do it now. Don't wait. Thank you for your question. Euro_Nas on TikTok says, hey bro, what's your opinion on leasing land for people who want to farm? If you want to farm, leasing of land is definitely a cost-effective way to go about it, as opposed to putting up capital to buy land, especially if you need large-scale blocks of land. Or again, define your goal. What is it that you want to farm? What's the acreage that's required for the farming enterprise to make sense or to be viable economically? Right? If you answer those questions, then you know where to look, what size to go for. I find that leasing of land is a great soft landing for that endeavor. Only thing I would recommend, if you intend to do this on a longer term basis, make sure your leasing agreement has a clause in there that gives you first right of refusal to purchase should the owner decide that they're selling the land that you're leasing. Okay, you should be given the first opportunity to purchase or refuse to purchase. Sometimes they call it lease with an option to buy agreement, uh, meaning even if the owner may not necessarily be thinking of selling now, they are open to it later, and they understand that this is going to be a lease for X number of years, after which I am going to buy. You can pre-arrange that. You can even prefix the price, depending on how skillful you are with negotiating and meeting the needs of the land seller. Remember, always find the pain points for the landowner. That's how you get a deal done. It has to make sense for them, and it's not always monetary. You'd be surprised. People sell for all sorts of reasons. So find the main reason, structure the deal right, work with licensed advocates. Don't do stupid contracts on napkins or notepads because you're trying to save a shilling or two here and there by not paying a licensed advocate. Do it right. Otherwise, you'll get burnt very quickly. So I think it's a great way to go, leasing of land as opposed to buying, especially for farming, and especially depending on what scale you're trying to go for. Thank you for asking. Euro_Naz on TikTok. Alias on TikTok says, do you sell lands out of towns? Yes, Alias. Most of the land we sell is not in towns. It's right outside of specific towns. If you look at our website, everything we have from Laikipia County, Nakuru County, whether it's at the lakefront, Elementaita, or directly on the highway in Naivasha, same in Kajiado County. These are, in some cases, not even considered to be peri-urban areas, like in Buko. It's a very rural area, hence the specificity of the product we have in Imbuko compared to what we're offering in Laikipia and Nakuru counties. So yes, we do sell land, but again, we're not agents or brokers. I just want to preempt that in case that's what you were asking. We only sell what we own. We never act as a middleman. We are not agents or brokers. So we would not sell anything that did not belong to us, at least legally speaking, from a registration of ownership perspective. But yes, short answer to your question is yes, we do sell land out of towns. Arena on TikTok says, my family is selling some 23.5 acres in Moa Hills. Can we work together on it? Thank you for that, Arena. I'm not sure what you mean by working together on it. Happy to consider a potential purchase investment if it makes sense, if we can come to some sort of agreement on all the necessary points regarding purchase of land. 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya. If you don't have that checklist, by the way, you'll find it on our website, which is www.grandacres.co.ke. I'll repeat that once more. The website is www.grandacres.co.ke. Depending on which platform you're tuned in on, you should be able to see that website address scrolling right beneath me on the screen. You'll click on the tab that says checklist. It'll pull up a small table for you to enter your name and email address. And once you hit send, it'll send you a PDF copy for free of the 9 steps to buying land safely in Kenya, completely free resource that we put together just for you. So if you don't have it yet, do it. Send it to your friends and family who are in the habit of buying land or are thinking about starting. Even if they're an expert land buyer for years, send it to them, because chances are, and this has been proven by surveys, in most cases, people do not follow due process, leaving themselves exposed to potential loss of the precious and expensive investments they have made by having skipped a step or two along the way. This is a great way to make sure you do not skip anything and expose yourself to potential pain in the future. But back to that comment, yes, happy to consider. DM us, let's have a conversation. Maybe we set up a site visit. But first, we'll ask for a pin drop, location, your asking price, payment terms, and we'll make a very quick assessment virtually before we get into physical engagement. That's how we prefer to do it, just because of the volumes of opportunities we have to consider at any one time. So, Arena, please DM us and let's see. Thank you. Thank you for sending that comment in. Wakanda 2020 on Instagram says, how is the real estate investment trust market in Kenya? Looking for investments that pay out dividends. Well, Wakanda real estate investment trusts in Kenya are still very infantile in their maturity. Kenya has struggled to understand, I should say, this particular investment vehicle or investment class. A lot of public education needs to happen. So it's slow. It's very slow. But there are a couple of opportunities you can look into. We are not investment advisors, so I will refrain from delving any further into who you should speak to and so on. Contact the right people, advocates, investment brokers, and so on. They'll guide you appropriately on the data that's currently available on the few opportunities that you might be able to consider for Nairobi. And you can take it from there. Thank you for asking. I see a question from Elias, real quick on TikTok, says, where did you say we can see the document for 9 steps of buying a land safely in Kenya? Alias, that's on our website, which is www.grandacres.co.ke. Find the tab that says checklist. Click on it, enter the details requested, and it'll send you a free copy. I hope that helps, Elias. Thank you for asking. Charlie Zoa 6 on TikTok says, how do you get money to buy big parcels of land? Do you use banks or do you use investors? Well, so far we've never borrowed from a bank to buy big parcels of land. Kenyan banks are generally hostile to our business model. They consider what we do to be speculative investment. Primarily because of the locations we prefer to work in. It's just a general attitude from the banking and finance sector around land investments or land development, land buying and selling. If you're talking about the built environment, meaning homes, businesses, malls, and so on, it's a lot easier to engage the banks for those sorts of financing deals. But for our space, they tend to frown on it, so we don't even bother. It would be too much of a hassle, besides the fact that they would want to encumber the asset likely, unless you have other idle assets that you're happy to surrender to them as securities. And so for that reason, we finance from the private market. Thank you for asking. Virginia_Kamau on Instagram says, good evening, Virginia. Which is the best area in Kiambu to purchase residential land? Around 2 acres. Honestly, Virginia, at this point, I can't say I know which is the best area. Kiambu is large. It's a large county with a lot happening. And I'm not in touch with what's happening in every corner. I can recommend some of the areas I know of. If you're speaking about Kiambu town specifically, definitely not a question I can answer for you. If you're speaking about Kiambu County in general, the usual suspects, Ridgeways, that corridor from Ridgeways Mall to the Windsor, all the way into Kiambu town, great area to look at. Primarily on the right side of the road. There are a ton of other opportunities on the left side, but those tend to be closer to the boundary with Nairobi and therefore are treated more like part of an extension of Runda, which has created this weird mongrel of a land product where it's not as stringently controlled as Nairobi because it's on the Kiambu side of the boundary, but people are asking Nairobi prices because it neighbors Runda. Again, you defined your goal. What's the purpose for buying the 2 acres? That should guide the rest of your journey. Is it for residential use specifically or exclusively? Do you want other zoning approvals related to that? What's your budget? I think the last time I checked around that area, an acre was being sold for 50 million shillings. It's probably gone up a little bit since, because that's been at least a couple of years. Do you have the budget to buy 2 acres at that asking price? If not, maybe you look at different areas. If budget is not an issue, then it becomes more a question of location and your due diligence, making sure that you're dealing with clean documents and a clean property. I hope that helps, Virginia. Thank you for asking. Wenyeji Hao on TikTok says, what land do you have on sale? Thank you for your question, Wenyeji Hao. We have land on sale currently in Laikipia County, Acacia Cove, amazing residential compound. We also have residential waterfronting plots at Lake Elementaita within Nakuru County, Gilgil sub-county, and also right on the highway, as I've mentioned, Olkekun, directly opposite the Safari Center, or the new Naiva supermarket touching the highway, where there's an art cafe and art cafe market. Amazing products, amazing locations, A1, grade A1. You will not find any other land seller in this country selling land next to any of those locations with the zoning legally approved by the relevant county authorities. Okay, we don't sell you agricultural freehold land as residential or commercial. That's a con. These have appropriate users. You can find all the details on these on our website, Wenyeji Hao, which again is www.grandacres.co.ke, and they are very prominently showcased. You can DM us on WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp number is 0700010001. I'll repeat that once more. Our WhatsApp number is 0700010001. Someone can share the brochure. It's easy and painless, or you can DM us on any of our social media handles, and we'll be happy to get you more information if you're having challenges navigating the website. Ranger 5462 on Instagram is back saying, what's your biggest achievement for Grand Acres this year so far? Biggest achievement for Grand Acres, we just managed to get an approval from a very difficult county, a county we've had nightmare scenarios to deal with in the past, for a much bigger project this time. And yeah, I can't even say that's an achievement really. It's by the grace of God that we were able to get that approval out. We'll have more details on that coming out shortly. I can't speak too much about that particular project yet, so stay tuned. Yes, and just still being here today having this conversation with you all, we consider to be a privilege and a massive achievement. Again, not something for us to boast about, just something to be grateful for. Thank you for asking. Another user on TikTok says, apart from the socials, is there another way that we can reach, like your phone numbers? Yes, it's the same phone number, 0700010001. Is also available for calls during work hours. If you call now, no one's going to answer. It's late. People are at home with their kids or asleep preparing for tomorrow. But you can reach us by phone on the same WhatsApp number, which again is 0700010001. Alias on TikTok says, looking for an agricultural piece of land in Embu, 3 acres. Rough budget, please. Alias, we currently do not have any inventory in that particular area in Embu. So we would not be the right partners for you to speak to about agricultural land in Embu at the moment. I wish you all success finding the right one. Gladys, who is part of the team, she's behind the equipment here. She happens to be from Embu. Maybe Gladys, you can give us an idea. What's the budget for 3 acres in Embu today? Would you know?
No, I wouldn't, because there's a lot of settling for points. That's why I usually hear points.
Yeah,
points,
that's
so.
weird. Yeah, I'm still getting used to what that means. Point. Okay, you've heard Gladys. I hope. She got no information for you. But I'm sure you can find out. Google is your friend. Thank you for asking. Ed Mutuota says, hi, please advise on leased land. Can one build on the land? And are there limitations? Semi-permanent house, can lease to own? Any risks involved with leasing land? Ed Mutuota, that's a great question. Most of these will be best answered by a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya, one who specializes in commercial law and conveyancing. Okay, you're asking very technical questions which could have multiple answers depending on a number of variables. For instance, primarily, who is the one leasing you the land? A lot of the answers to your questions will depend on them, the landowner. What are they willing to permit or not? The answer is yes to all your questions. It is possible to build on the land if the leaser is willing. Are there limitations? Yes, the ones that the landowner will impose on you. Semi-permanent house, also possible depending on what you agree with the landowner. Can you lease to own? Absolutely, if the landowner is willing and you put it in the contract. Any risks involved with leasing land? Plenty, a ton of risks, especially when you're looking at investing in infrastructure and putting up permanent buildings or semi-permanent buildings, drilling boreholes, this, that, and the other. If you don't own the land and you're leasing the land, your lease agreement has to be extremely well prepared, which is again why I will strongly recommend you speak to a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya who specializes in conveyancing and commercial law so that they can flag any potential issues for you well in advance. One of the biggest risks involved with building on leased land is what happens when your lease expires. Or what happens if the landowner decides they're not going to wait until the lease period is over, they want to sell the land to someone else, in essence, changing the landlord for you. Many pitfalls come with that. So you need to think about all these scenarios and put in clauses in your agreement that cover you and your interests for the duration of your lease. Another landmark ruling that came out I want to say maybe 2 years, maybe within the last 2 or 3 years, um, says in essence that anything affixed to the land, anything that's in the ground on a piece of land, anything that is attached to the soil on a piece of land belongs to the registered owner of that piece of land. So if you lease a piece of land, it was vacant, it was farmland, there was nothing on it. You're leasing it for X number of years, doesn't matter how long. You build on it, you develop it, you're farming, you're using it for whatever purpose you're using. Unless your lease agreement from the onset said that any improvements on the land would belong to you, and therefore, if you're not picking them up and living with them, you be compensated for them. If your agreement does not say that at the point that you're leasing the land, everything you put in the ground belongs to the landowner. So you'll find that a lot of people have invested heavily in developing a piece of land that they were leasing for long term. When the lease ended, the landlord was no longer willing to extend the lease, and they have to leave the buildings and the boreholes and everything else that has been attached to the land. It can be very painful. So get the right legal advice, get your contracts drawn up right to preempt any possible scenario to cover you, especially in the scenario where the landowner decides to sell the piece of land you're leasing to someone else. Even if they're gonna agree with a new buyer that they're gonna maintain your lease, you need to know how that covers you. That's the shortest answer I can give to that question, Ed. And again, I cannot understate the importance, or rather overstate the importance of working with a licensed advocate to help you navigate this. And I wish you all success. Thanks for asking. Victor Kiprop on Instagram says, hello, Mr. Wangwe. Do you have any interest in Kuku Group Ranch or areas surrounding the ranch, example, Rombo or Kimana? Potentially, Victor. I mean, reach out, DM us, send us pin drops, details. Let's have a conversation. If location is good for us, which I will just quickly mention as far as reaching out, if it's not touching the tarmac road or within a kilometer of the tarmac road, we are not interested. So location is important. Send us the details and let's see. And thank you for asking, Victor. Lin-B254 on TikTok says, is Mwalimu Farm safe to buy? Kindly advise. Thank you for that question, Lin-B. I don't know much about Mwalimu Farm. I haven't seen the documents, its ownership documents, or any of those, so I do not qualify to give you an opinion about that. I mean, part of due diligence involves what's in the grapevine, right? Not to say that everything that people talk about is true, but you should pay enough attention that you investigate further. Okay. As far as Mwalimu Farm, that's the best I can say. Otherwise, anything else I say would be speculative and a disservice to both you and the owners of Mwalimu Farm. But thank you for asking. Ed Mutuota says, I really appreciate your response to me. Great insights. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for asking the question. And all success to you, man. Davici's comment on TikTok is, big fan of you here. I like what you are doing. Big up. Thank you, Davici. I appreciate that kind compliment. Big up to you too. Wilma says, tell us about what is meant by a company being registered to real estate shareholders. Wilma, I'm not sure I understand your question. If you would just clarify further so that I can answer accurately, I'd really appreciate that. We out of questions? Wow. Well, we went 45 minutes before people ran out of questions, which is decent. I think that's a record. We have 15 minutes to go, 14 now. It's 8:46 p.m. We will stop promptly at 9 p.m. because time is money and money buys land. Therefore, we do not play games with your time. So send in as many questions as you can, guys. If you have a comment, maybe you don't have a question, maybe you want to share an experience you've had that could encourage other people, or maybe be a warning sign for other people tuned in, feel free. Um, let's make use of the little time we have left. Okay, we have another question from Lynn-B on TikTok. And they say, briefly advise on the steps to follow when buying land. Lynn B, this is precisely why we created the checklist so that I do not have to briefly advise every time someone asks. It's a free resource for you. Very simple. Standard 5 kid can follow it from 1 to 9 and own land safely. Download it. It's absolutely free. Go to our website, www.grandacres.co.ke. Click on the tab that says checklist, enter your details. It should email you a free copy within seconds. If you're having challenges downloading, let us know. We'll WhatsApp it to you directly. If there's something specific, Lynn-B, that you want us to address on the 9 steps, let me know. I can expound on that, but not on the whole list. We don't have enough time. Waigumi Mwangi on Instagram says, a practicing surveyor in making, hope to work with you someday. A practicing surveyor in the making, hope to work with you someday. Thank you, Waigumi Mwangi. All success to you. Mohammed Ali on TikTok says, any advice on succession on a property and steps to take? How long does it take? Mohammed, I would need an enormous amount of intricate details before I can attempt to even share steps to take. It's like going to see a doctor because you have symptoms of sickness in your body. Unless you're willing to speak to a specialist and be vulnerable about the details, they cannot diagnose your problem properly. That's what legal matters are like, especially when it comes to succession. My advice is, if you haven't done so yet, hire a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya, one who specializes on succession law. They will be a great help to you. There are people who studied for years and practiced for years before they sat the bar and practiced some more for years to have the competence to guide you appropriately on this particular issue. As far as steps to take, it'll depend on your specific scenario or circumstance. Was there a will in place? Was there not one? Do you need to go to court? If you have to go to court, it takes roughly 12 months to go through the court process before you have letters of administration issued, unless there's extraneous circumstances that the court deems justify issuing those letters of administration earlier. But it takes time. It can take even longer. And a lot of that depends on which advocate is helping you also. So my best advice to you, Muhammad Ali, is hire a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya that specializes in succession law. Ask them. They'll tell you what their specialty is. Ask for referrals. Don't just take their word for it. Ask them for referrals to clients they have served. Do your DD on them. And you should be okay. Thank you for asking, Mohammed. Cliff on TikTok says, what advice would you give in regards to entering an agreement with a company to develop your land? Okay, so my first question to you, Cliff, is why is a company developing my land? Are they a developer? Are they a contractor? Like, give me some more color. I need more details. First thing I'd say about entering into agreements is work with licensed advocates to draft them. Don't do them yourself. And work with those who have competence in that particular area. Whatever area that is, there's an advocate who specializes in that area. Even generalists sometimes can help, and they're certainly better than trying to do it on your own. So that's number one. Get yourself a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I know I sound like a broken record about this, but I will never stop saying it. Work with licensed professionals. Licensed. Ask them for their license. They have to renew it every year. Just because they have experience in the past does not mean they're necessarily licensed to practice in this year. And if something goes wrong that causes you loss in this year that they're not licensed because you took their advice, engaged them, and paid them money, that's on you. Okay, so make sure they're licensed, make sure they have the necessary competence for the specific situation you're dealing with, and you'll be fine. The rest gets easier. So Cliff, unless you want to provide me more details, we have 7 minutes remaining. That's the best I can say for now. Jared Wall says, Asante Mkubwa. Thank you, Jared. I'll say Karibu Mzito. Grand Acres by Goshen Acquisitions TikTok page has another question, comment from VMK.
Yes, that's a question from VMK.
Okay. On TikTok. Does allodial title apply in Kenya? VMK, I have never heard of that term, allodial or allodial. Not even sure how to pronounce it. Does it apply in Kenya? I don't believe so. I would have heard of it by now. It's been 13 years we've been doing this in Kenya. I'm also Kenyan by birth. So I've lived in Kenya for more than the 13 years we've been a land developer, land seller. If there is such a thing, I'll be learning about it or hearing about it for the first time today. I'll ask around, but I've never heard of that term, VMK. Based on that, I'd say no, but we shall ask around. Lamik de Sparta on TikTok says, do you buy lands? Yes, Lamik, we do buy land because we only sell what we own. At some point, we have to buy land. So yes. Virginia underscore Kamau on Instagram says, what's a minimum subdivision size in relation? How do you handle inherited land that is too small to get a title? Well, Virginia, I would say as far as minimum subdivision size, it would depend on the zoning and the particular county that you're in. Different counties have different policies and restrictions on sizes, depending on the zoning and which zoning is allowed. So I strongly recommend that you visit your county surveyor's office. They're a good resource to ask, as well as your county's planning office. Would probably be a combination of Ministry of Lands, Urban Development, Physical Planning, right? Your physical planning office will generally have the long-term plans for the county as far as zoning restrictions and sizes allowed for those zones within your county by specific areas of the county. Because it will depend. Different counties have different policies. In some counties, the minimum sizes are larger than others. So, in relation, how do you handle inherited land? If it's too small to get a title, what do you mean by the land is too small? Unless you're talking about a point, which is a weird term of how people use in the rural parts of Kenya. What size are we talking about, Virginia, is what I would ask. And if in doubt, get yourself a licensed advocate to help. They'll be able to flag that down for you fairly quickly. In my view, there should not be a piece of land in this country that cannot get a title deed, unless it was irregularly or illegally subdivided, which happens a lot, which is why you need to work with the right people, make sure you follow due process, so that you don't find yourself in these weird gray areas where you're dealing with a piece of land that is supposedly or apparently too small to get a title deed. That should not be possible. Every piece of land in this country must have a title deed, especially if it's owned privately. Those are my 2 cents, Virginia. Thank you for asking. Wilma says, okay, I listened to someone say that before buying land, the buyer should confirm the company selling should be registered. Wilma, punctuation marks, tafadhali. Use commas and full stops. It will help me understand your question, if there's a question, Wilma. Yes, it's true. You should confirm if the company is registered as a real estate shareholders. Where do I start? Okay, I have 1 minute. I'll attempt to answer Wilma's question in that time. So, 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya. Wilma, if you haven't downloaded that document, as I've already shared 3 or 4 times, do it now. It'll show you how to do your due diligence on the seller of a piece of land. Whether they are an individual or a company, the process is largely the same. You'll be asking for specifically different details depending on whether it's a company versus an individual. If it's a company, yes, you need to know who the shareholders are. To know who the shareholders are, the company needs to provide you what we call a CR12, which is issued by the company registrar. It's done digitally these days. Your licensed advocate will very easily be able to retrieve that document, even have a copy of the company's registration certificate. And if there are shareholders, there needs to be a board resolution from that company giving the company permission to sell you that piece of land. All these details are contained in the checklist. Do yourself a favor, Wilma, and download it. If you have any other questions after reviewing it, let us know. DM us. We'll be happy to engage you further. Ladies and gents, it's now 9 p.m. on the dot and 35 seconds. I want to thank you all from the depths of my bottomless heart for making time to join us today. It's a pleasure. We love you guys. We wish you all success in your land investment journeys. And I do look forward to the next session in a couple weeks. Grand acres to you. Cheers.